So in this lecture we are going to be take a look at attack against identity management and also access control. So this is going to come down to how people manage their accounts online and how those people are authorized to access resources within the web application. So this is a couple of discrete yet quite closely related topics which are very common issues to deal with in the web application. So let's move on and take a look at the overview of what we are going to be talk about in this lecture. So first of all, as you are about to learn the account management and facilities are frequently exploitable, and what I mean by that is that there are many different way account management system are built which can present viable exploits to the attackers. So you will see a bunch of those in this lecture, and if you are really interested in the security account management facilities, go check out I covered couple of these topics in my previously. So the one thing we need to find is when we look at the access control, and we have to look at frequently that it's not very good. Now that may mean that they are missing, so there is a no access control, that all the resources should have a proper authorization. Well, it's insufficient, or so it hasn't been properly there. It gaps in the implementation, and I'm going to show you a great example of this. So in some degree there is also understandable because the facilities, both identity management and access control, can be quite complex. I mentioned earlier that nuances, there are a lot of different ways that these things can be implemented, and lot of different edge cases, and not all the technical either. Some of them are social, and you will see what I mean by that as we go through this lecture. So whilst it certainly critical to get to the right, it's not always easy either. What you will find though in this flaw is easy to detect. Some of the things you are about to see, you recognize other web application you use, and certainly after this lecture it will be very easy for you to find them in the web application that you are testing. So one last point is this is normally where I would include like session hijacking, but I do already have that dedicated lecture that I covered previously. So session hijacking is kind of in this topic related, so it's better if you go and take a look at the session hijacking. So let's now talk about identity management in definition. So identity management is also known as identity and access management, that ensure the authorized people and only authorized people have access to the technology resources they need to perform for their job functions. It includes policies and technologies that encompass a organization-wide process to properly identify or authenticate and authorize people and the group of people or software application through attributes including user access rights and restriction based on their identities. And identity management system prevents unauthorized access to system and resources, helps to prevent an enterprise of protected data, and raise alert and alarms when access attempts are made by unauthorized personnel or programs, whether from inside or outside the enterprise parameter. So you can have a question like why do we need a identity management? So let's give you an answer to this. So a recent study found that 80% of the breaches were due to the identity access issues, namely weak or mismatched credentials. If proper control are not in place or procedures and processes of identity access management are properly followed, password could become compromised, phishing attacks enabled, and breaches of ransomware attack became a reality. Fortunately, modern IAM platform offers automation of many of the functions to help ensure the controls that are utilized, such as removing a user from the directory when a HR system indicates that employee has left the organization. Since new privacy and data security legislation is so frequently created, IAM can play an important role that of helping the organization stay in compliances within the myriad of a regulatory and governance mandates in effect, ensuring that only authorized users have access to the data. But the data itself is where it should be. In the end, IT security is largely about the access. So, a solid IAM strategy is a critical component of a overall IT security and offers a first-line protection to any threat, whether from outside or inside the firewall. So, let's go and take a look at the weaknesses in identity management. So, I am going to start with just a couple of examples of weakness in identity management, and that are rather glaring weakness, but they are good illustration of how badly we can get identity management wrong. So take this for an example. Just take a moment to read. What this login process is now, of course, keep in mind that the mobile number is almost public to anyone, to any of your friends, colleagues, or even on the online you share your phone numbers. So this is a really good and bad example of a login implementation. It really doesn't get much worse than that. So let me show you another example of this. This one was covered quite extensively in the earlier 2015s. So the organization didn't seem to be see the problem with the implementation, but if you take a moment and read through it, what you realize is that the password reset feature only needed a username, which by default is an email address and a birthday date. Now, after you provide these two pieces of information, you could reset the password. No verification, no nothing. So you didn't have any demonstrate that. So you actually own the email address, or you had to do the show that you know your attacker knows your email address and guess the date of your birth from any of your online or social pages, or just randomly guessed it. So the irony of this particular case is that the organization said, hey, your name is sensitive data and you shouldn't be able to sharing it. It's your email address. That's how you get email. You share it with the other people, and as for birthday, that is obviously a personal attribute which is shared extensively, not just with your friend but via the other channels such as social media. So it's not as hard to discover the someone's birthday. It's just easy. So these two pieces of information together were enough to reset an account, which then gave you access the money. So in this case, money and the gambling account in this Betfair account, in this betting site. So these two examples do set a bit of low bar in terms of just how the bad identity management can be, but I wanted to start here and give you a little bit of sense of the level that we often have to deal with these challenges. And certainly if you are wearing an ethical hat and if you are looking for a vulnerabilities and system implementation like this do tend to stand out of somewhat hopefully that sets the scene of how bad it can be. So let's start looking at some specific implementation of identity management and have weaknesses in them. Okay. So now in the future I will talk about the identity and immigration.